The year is 2024. The room is on the 47th floor, glass and steel. Anya Sharma leans over a holographic map table. It glows with the arterial lines of a new logistics network, high-speed rail, automated freight. The future, rendered in blue light. The line on the map is a masterpiece of efficiency, a straight shot across 3 states, almost perfect. Her finger traces the line through central Ohio, then it stops, right there. A sudden, violent curve, a perfect arc that disrupts 100 miles of straight-line engineering. It looks like a mistake, a glitch in the data. She says to the project lead, a man named Harris, "What is that?" Harris sighs. He doesn't even need to look. He knows the curve by heart. "That," he says, "is the Mayhew Bend." Anya zooms in. The map resolves. The curve is there to avoid a single, small rectangle of land, just over 90 acres. A farm. It looks like an island in a sea of concrete and steel. She pulls up the acquisition files. The project began in 1978. She scrolls through the names. Miller, acquired. Schmidt, acquired. O'Connell, acquired. Page after page. Beside each name, a number. Double the assessed market value. A generous offer. A life-changing offer for most. Then she finds the name. Mayhew, Elspeth. The entry is different. A single word. Refused. Followed by a string of notes. Offer increased, 1985. Refused. Offer increased, 1996. Refused. Life estate offered, 2007. Refused. The file is thick with decades of polite, formal failure. Anya looks from the glowing file back to the map, at the stubborn 90-acre rectangle, and the multi-billion-dollar curve built around it. She feels something she can't quite name. This was the woman who built a curve into the future, because someone told her it was the only straight line. This channel tells the stories of people who refuse to be erased. The quiet ones, the stubborn ones, the ones who look at an offer that everyone says is perfect and find the one thing wrong with it, the part where they have to give up who they are. These stories need to be told. They are a map of a different kind of progress. If you believe that, subscribe to this channel. Because the story of Elspeth Mayhew is not just about a farm. It's about the piece of ground you stand on and what it's worth. Let's go back to March of 1978. The mud was just starting to thaw in the fields. Elspeth Mayhew stood on her front porch. She was 36 years old. The farm had been her whole life. Her father had died the previous winter, a hard winter. His last words to her weren't about love or God or regret. He was a farmer. His last words were about the land. He held her hand. His own was rough as bark. He looked past her, out the window. "Elspeth," he'd whispered, "they can offer you the world, but they don't own the dirt. Remember that. The dirt is all that's real." Now, standing on the porch, she could smell it. The rich, dark loam her grandfather had cleared. The same soil her father had worked for 50 years. It was in her blood. A clean, black Ford LTD pulled into her driveway. It crunched on the gravel. The sound of the outside world arriving. A man got out. He was not a big man. He wore a gray suit, a tie, polished shoes. He looked neat, organized, certain. His name was Arthur Henderson. He worked for the railroad. He carried a leather briefcase. He smiled a kind, reassuring smile. The kind of smile that expects to be smiled back at. Elspeth did not smile. She watched him walk up the path. He wiped his shoes carefully on the mat before stepping onto her porch. A respectful man, a considerate man. Miss Mayhew? I'm Arthur Henderson. I sent you a letter. Elspeth nodded. She had the letter. It was on the kitchen table. It spoke of progress, of national interest, of a great project that would benefit everyone. She led him inside. The house was quiet. It smelled of wood smoke and old books. They sat at the oak kitchen table, the same table where she'd done her homework as a girl, the same table where her father had signed the deed. Henderson opened his briefcase. He was very organized. He laid out maps with bright red lines. He laid out documents with official seals. He spoke in a calm, reasonable voice. He told her about the future. High-speed trains connecting the coasts. A new era of commerce. And this valley, her valley, was the perfect route. The straightest line, the most efficient path. He explained that the federal government had approved the project. Eminent domain was a possibility. But the railroad wanted to be a good neighbor. They wanted to do right by the families who had built this place. So, he said, they were prepared to make a historic offer. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It had a number on it. A very large number. $180,000. In 1978, that was a fortune. It was double the most generous appraisal of her 92 acres. Double the value of the house, the barn, the equipment, everything. It was enough to buy a new house in the city. Enough to never work another day in her life. A golden parachute out of a life of mud and sweat and uncertainty. Henderson leaned forward. His expression was one of genuine concern. Miss Mayhew, he said. Elspeth, I've been doing this for 25 years. I have never, not once, been authorized to make an offer this generous. This is a windfall, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He paused, letting the weight of the number settle in the quiet kitchen. Your neighbors, the Millers, the Schmidts, they've already accepted. We're having a meeting at the town hall next week to celebrate. This is a good thing for the whole community, a chance for everyone to start fresh. His words were smooth, they were logical, they sounded like the truth. He believed every word he was saying. He genuinely thought he was saving her from a life of struggle, from the loneliness of this old house, from the back-breaking labor of farming. He wasn't a villain. He was a gatekeeper, and his gate led to a future he was absolutely certain was better. This is the most dangerous kind of limitation, the one imposed by someone who believes they are protecting you. Certainty delivered with kindness. It is more damaging than hostility. You cannot fight it with anger. You can only disprove it, and that takes decades. Elspeth looked at the number. Then she looked out the window at the field behind the house. The winter wheat was just starting to show, a faint green haze over the dark soil. She thought of her father's hands. She thought of his last words. They don't own the dirt. She looked back at Mr. Henderson. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. It's a fine offer, Mr. Henderson, but this land doesn't have a price. Henderson's smile faltered, just for a second. He thought she was negotiating. He was prepared for that. Well, he started, we can discuss. She cut him off, gently. No, there is nothing to discuss. The farm is not for sale. Now the smile was gone, replaced by a look of patient confusion, like a teacher explaining a simple sum to a child who refuses to understand. Miss Mayhew, perhaps you don't grasp the situation. The project is going forward. The line is coming through. Your farm is directly in the path. This isn't a choice between selling and not selling. It's a choice between selling for a great price now or being forced to sell for a much lower one later. I am trying to help you. I am trying to make sure you get the best possible outcome. He sounded so reasonable, so certain. and Elspeth knew he was the most dangerous man she would ever meet, because he was kind. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Henderson. My answer is no." She stood up. The meeting was over. He sat there for a moment, baffled. This was not in his playbook. He had met angry farmers, greedy farmers, emotional farmers. He had never met a farmer who was simply finished with the conversation. He packed his briefcase. Slowly. He stood. "The offer stands for 30 days, Miss Mayhew. I hope you'll reconsider, for your own sake." He walked to the door. He paused on the porch. He looked out at the quiet fields, the old barn. He saw decay. He saw a relic. He saw something that needed to be cleared away for the future. He didn't see the dirt. Not really. He drove away. And Elspeth Mayhew was left alone, in the quiet, with the future barreling down on her in the shape of a straight red line. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not out of malice, not out of anger, but by someone who thought they were protecting you from yourself. Someone who was absolutely certain they knew what was best for you. It's a particular kind of wound. Tell us about it in the comments. Because what Elspeth did next wasn't a fight. It was an act of quiet, radical reimagination. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't write to her congressman. She walked out into the field, the one behind the house. She knelt down. The ground was still cold, damp. She scooped up a handful of the soil. It was black and heavy, full of life. She let it run through her fingers. Her father's voice was in her head. The dirt is all that's real. She knew what they saw. A patch of land, an obstacle, a variable in an equation of progress. They didn't see the mycelial networks under the surface, the history held in the clay, the million tiny lives in every handful. They didn't see it as a living thing. She went back inside. She took out a piece of paper, the good stationery her mother had saved for special occasions. She wrote a letter. It was very short. "Dear Mr. Henderson, thank you for your visit and for the generous offer. The farm is not for sale. Sincerely, Elspeth Mayhew." She put it in an envelope. She drove to town and mailed it. Then she came home and started her spring planting, just like she did every year. The news traveled fast. The valley was small. Her phone started ringing. It was her neighbors, the Millers. "Elspeth, what are you doing? They're offering us a fortune. We can all move to Florida. Think about it." It was the Schmidts. "You're being selfish, Elspeth. If you hold out, you could mess this up for everyone. This is our one big chance. Don't ruin it." They were not unkind. They were afraid. Afraid she would take away their golden parachute. Then came the town meeting, the one Henderson had mentioned. It was at the Grange Hall. The railroad bought coffee and donuts, a celebration. Elspeth went. She sat in the back. Henderson was at the front. He was smiling again. He spoke about the bright future, the new opportunities. He called the names of the families who had sold. They stood up to applause. They looked happy, relieved. Then someone asked about the Mayhew farm. A hush fell over the room. Henderson's smile tightened just a little. He said, "We are still in negotiations with Miss Mayhew. We are confident we will reach an agreement that benefits everyone." He looked towards the back of the room. He was looking for her. He was sending a message. Don't make this difficult. Everyone is watching. After the meeting, people avoided her eyes, her friends of 30 years, the people she'd grown up with. She was no longer one of them. She was the obstacle, the holdout, the woman standing in the way of their new life. Only one person spoke to her, Old Man Hemlock. He was 80. He'd sold his land, too. He walked over to her as she was leaving. His eyes were watery but clear. He leaned on his cane. "You're doing a fool thing, Elspeth." She braced herself, but then he said, "Or a brave one. I can't quite decide which." He patted her arm. "Your father was a stubborn man, too. He knew this land was worth more than money. Don't let them tell you otherwise." He was the ally she didn't know she had. His words were a small shield. She drove home as the sun set. The valley looked the same as it always had. But it wasn't. It was sold. It was a commodity. It was a line on a map. All of it. Except for 92 acres. Her 92 acres. The 30 days passed. A new letter arrived from the railroad. The tone was different, colder. It mentioned legal proceedings, condemnation, eminent domain. It said they were moving forward with the surveys. The next week, the survey crews arrived. Young men in bright orange vests. They parked their trucks on the road. They started driving stakes into the miller's old cornfield. Stakes with red plastic ribbons that fluttered in the wind. They were marking the path, the straight red line. It ran right through the middle of her property, right through her best field, the one her father called the money field. She watched them from her porch. They stopped at her fence line. One of the young men came to her door. He was polite. "Ma'am, we have a work order to survey your property." Elspeth stood in the doorway. She was not holding a weapon. She was not shouting. She just stood there. "You are not welcome on my land." The young man was flustered. "Ma'am, we have a legal right. This is private property. You do not have my permission to enter. Please leave." Her voice was calm. It was absolute. The young man went back to his truck. He made a call on his radio. They packed up their equipment. They left. It was a small victory, but she knew it was temporary. This was just the beginning, the easy part. Because this is where the story becomes bigger than one woman and one farm. It's about what happens when progress meets a force of nature it cannot understand. The bulldozers came in the fall, great yellow machines that tore up the earth. They started on the far side of the valley. The sound carried for miles, a constant grinding roar. Dust filled the air, a brown haze that never settled. Elspeth watched from her fields as her neighbors' houses came down. The Miller place, where she'd gone to birthday parties. The Schmidt barn, where they'd held dances. Torn down in hours, reduced to splinters and rubble. Trucks hauled it all away, leaving behind flat, scraped earth. The valley of her childhood was being erased, day by day. The railroad's lawyers sent more letters. They were suing to condemn the land. She had to hire a lawyer of her own, a young man from the county seat. He told her the truth. "You can't win, Miss Mayhew. They have the law on their side. The best we can do is fight for a better price." Elspeth looked at him. "I'm not fighting for a price. I'm fighting for my farm." The lawyer sighed. He thought she was naive, but he took her case. The legal battle dragged on for years. Meanwhile, the construction continued. It crept closer, a tide of mud and steel. They built a new access road. It cut off her old driveway. For 2 weeks, she was landlocked. She couldn't get her truck out to buy supplies. She had to walk a mile through the woods to the old county road. She lived on what she had in her pantry and what she could pull from her garden. This was their strategy, not to fight her in court, but to make her life impossible, to squeeze her out, to break her spirit with 1,000 small inconveniences. Her well water turned brown from the silt runoff. The constant noise made it hard to sleep. The dust coated her crops. Her old neighbors were gone, replaced by construction crews. She was utterly alone. An island in the middle of a massive industrial project. One day, Mr. Henderson came back. He drove a different car. He looked older, more tired. He didn't come to the house. He stood at the edge of her property. He called her name. She was in the garden, weeding her tomatoes. She walked over to the fence. He looked uncomfortable. "Elspeth, this has gone on long enough. We are prepared to make you a new offer." He named a number. It was almost double the first one, $350,000. "And," he said, "we will pay all your legal fees. Just sign the papers. End this. Move on with your life." He wasn't being cruel. He was exhausted. He wanted this problem off his desk. She was a loose end, an anomaly that was costing his company time and money. She looked at the man who was trying to buy her life. She thought about the sleepless nights, the brown water, the loneliness. It would be so easy to say yes, so easy to let go. She could feel the temptation, the pull of an easier life. Then she looked down at her hands. They were covered in dirt. The rich black soil of her garden, her father's voice. The dirt is all that's real. She looked back at Henderson. "My answer is the same, Arthur. The farm is not for sale." For the first time, she saw not kindness in his eyes, not confusion, but a flicker of something else. Respect. He just nodded. He got back in his car and drove away. He knew then that they would not win, not by buying her. So they changed their plans. The engineers were furious. The accountants were apoplectic. Changing the route would cost millions. It would mean new surveys, new environmental impact studies, a delay of at least 2 years. But the alternative was an endless court battle with a woman who would not quit. A woman who was becoming a story. A local newspaper had written about her. The lone farmer against the railroad. The company hated the publicity. So they drew a new line on the map, a gentle curve around a 92-acre rectangle. The Mayhew Bend. The construction crews changed direction. They moved away from her fence line. They began clearing the land to the north. One morning, the constant roar was farther away. The dust began to settle. She had won, but it wasn't a victory she could celebrate. There was no parade, no cheering crowds, just the quiet hum of machinery in the distance, and the knowledge that her world had been permanently altered. She had saved her farm, but she had lost her valley. What happened next changed everything. Because holding on was one thing. Living with the consequences was another. The railroad was built. The first train came through in the summer of 1982. Elspeth was in her kitchen, canning beans. She heard a low rumble. It grew louder, a vibration in the floorboards. She went to the window, and there it was. A silver snake of a train, moving faster than anything she had ever seen. It screamed past her property line, less than 100 yards from her house. The windows rattled, a picture fell off the wall, and then it was gone, leaving a ringing silence behind it. This was her new neighbor. A train, every hour, 24 times a day. The noise became the new rhythm of her life. She learned to sleep through it. She learned to talk over it. It was the price of staying. The years began to stack up, like cords of wood. 1985. The railroad offered to buy the land again. A new agent, a younger man. He didn't have Henderson's kindness. He had a spreadsheet. He talked about asset valuation and long-term yield. He couldn't understand why she would keep a low-yield farm next to a high-value transport corridor. It didn't compute. She sent him away. 1990. The fields around her, the ones that had been scraped bare, were now being developed. Logistics warehouses, truck depots, acres and acres of concrete. Her farm was becoming an oasis of green in a gray desert. Trucks rumbled past on the access road day and night. Their headlights swept across her windows. 1996. The railroad was bought by a global conglomerate. Their lawyers sent a new kind of offer, a life estate. She could live on the farm until she died. The company would take possession after. They would even pay her a yearly stipend. It was a tempting offer for a woman now in her mid-50s, security for the rest of her days. She wrote back the same letter she had always written. The farm is not for sale. By now, she was a legend, a local curiosity. People would drive down the service road just to look, to see the farm the railroad had to go around. They called it the holdout farm. She ignored them. She kept working. She adapted. The trains kicked up dust. So she planted a long row of pine trees along the tracks, a green wall that grew taller every year. The warehouses blocked the morning sun. So she started growing mushrooms in her shady back field. She found new ways to survive, to thrive. Her farm was no longer just a farm. It was a statement, an act of defiance written in soil and chlorophyll. She never spoke about it. She never gave interviews. She simply did the work, day in, day out, for 40 years. The world changed. The trains got faster. The warehouses got bigger. The world got louder. And her 92 acres remained, quiet, green, unsold. Arthur Henderson retired in 1995. They say he moved to Arizona, but once a year he would drive back to Ohio. He would park his car on the service road, and he would just look at the farm, at the curve in the tracks. He never got out of the car. He never tried to speak to her. He just watched, the witness to a story he had started, but could not finish. He was watching the quietest, most devastating kind of victory, the kind that doesn't celebrate. It just endures. Let me tell you about the next few years, because this is where the story of one woman's refusal becomes a lesson for all of us. It's about what we leave behind, and how the quietest decisions can have the loudest echoes. The year is 2024. Anya Sharma drives a rented electric car down a corporate service road. The silence of the car is unnerving. It's broken every few minutes by the whoosh of a maglev freight train on the tracks beside her. She sees the green wall of pine trees first, then, through a gap, a house. An old white farmhouse, smoke curling from the chimney. It's exactly as the satellite photos showed, an anomaly, a piece of the past lodged in the heart of the future. Her company wants the land. The new generation of trains requires a wider corridor. The Mayhew Bend is now a multi-million-dollar bottleneck. They want to straighten the line. Anya's job is to finally make that happen. She has been authorized to offer up to $10 million, an absurd number, a life-destroying number. She has a briefcase full of documents, renderings of the new straight track, financial projections, legal agreements. She feels confident, certain, just like Henderson all those years ago. She parks her car. She walks up the same path. An old woman is on the porch. Her back is to the road. She is shelling peas into a metal bowl. The sound is a soft, rhythmic pinging. She must be in her 80s now. Her hair is white. Her hands are gnarled with arthritis, but they are steady. Anya feels a tremor of doubt. "Miss Mayhew?" The woman turns. Her eyes are the color of a winter sky, clear and deep. "Yes?" "I'm Anya Sharma. I'm with the Rail Corporation." Elspeth nods slowly. She doesn't invite Anya to sit. She just waits. The silence stretches. Anya feels her corporate confidence evaporating in the quiet air. She opens her mouth to start her carefully rehearsed speech about progress, about the future, about the incredible, life-changing offer she is about to make. But before she can say a word, Elspeth speaks. Her voice is soft, but it cuts through everything. "Let me guess. You're here to tell me what's best for me." The words land like stones. They are not angry. They are not bitter. They are a simple statement of fact. A fact that has defined this woman's entire life. Anya is speechless. Her script is useless. Her numbers are meaningless. She is facing something that cannot be bought, cannot be negotiated with, cannot be moved. She finds her voice. It's smaller than before. Why? I've read the whole file. I don't understand why you never sold. Elspeth looks away from Anya, out towards the fields. My father told me something before he died. He said the dirt is all that's real. For 40 years, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought he was talking about the soil, about farming. She gestures to the warehouses shimmering in the distance, to the train that glides past on its magnetic cushion. They built all this whole new world, and they think it's real. But it's built on deals, on numbers in a computer. It can all disappear tomorrow. She picks up a handful of peas from the bowl. They are bright green, perfectly round. This is real. The sun that grew them, the rain that watered them, the dirt they came from. That's real. You can't sell what's real, Miss Sharma. You can only be a caretaker for it. Anya looks at the briefcase in her hand. It feels foolish, an insult. She doesn't even open it. She knows there is nothing inside that matters. Thank you for your time, Miss Mayhew. She turns and walks back to her car, defeated. Not by a lawyer, not by a protest, but by a bowl of peas. And by a truth so simple and so profound it could not be entered into a spreadsheet. Anya's report to the board was not what they expected. It was short. It contained no new financial offers. It simply said, "The Mayhew property is not an asset to be acquired. It is a landmark to be preserved." She proposed a new plan. Leave the bend. Work around it. And more than that, she proposed the corporation create a conservation trust to buy the development rights to the land, not to own it, but to protect it, to ensure that after Elspeth was gone, it would never be developed. It would remain a farm, forever. The board was shocked, but Anya was persuasive. She spoke of public relations, of the story, of turning a 40-year headache into a positive symbol. The stubborn old woman was a liability, but the wise protector of the land? That was a story they could sell. They approved the plan. Elspeth Mayhew signed the papers. She didn't sell her land. She sold its future. She ensured it would remain a farm long after she was gone. The money, and it was a lot of money, she used to create a scholarship, the Mayhew Grant, for young people who want to learn how to farm, not on giant industrial scales, but on small, sustainable plots, the caretakers of the future. Elspeth died 2 years later, in the winter, in the same bed her father had died in. She was buried on a small hill overlooking the money field. There is no grand monument, just a simple stone. Elspeth Mayhew. She was a good caretaker. The farm is now a teaching farm, run by the trust she created. Young farmers come from all over to learn. They learn about soil health, crop rotation, and the art of quiet defiance. The trains still run. They still follow the gentle curve of the Mayhew Bend. And sometimes, the conductors say, you can look out the window, and you can see young people working in the fields, their hands in the dirt, keeping something real alive, in the middle of the future. On a wall in the farmhouse hangs a single framed piece of paper. It's a deed, signed in 1919, the original deed to the Mayhew farm. The ink is faded, the paper is yellowed, but it is the physical artifact of a promise made by a grandfather to the land, a promise kept by a father, a promise defended by a daughter. Students who visit the farm are shown the deed. They are told the story. They touch the glass, and they feel the weight of that promise, the weight of a legacy that was never about money. It was about the dirt. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told what they can't do. Someone is being presented with a reasonable, logical, certain path. A path that requires them to give up the one piece of ground that makes them who they are. They are being told it's for their own good, that it's the only smart move, that everyone else is doing it. The story of Elspeth Mayhew is not a fairy tale. It's a field guide, a map for the quiet resistance. It teaches us that the most powerful word in the world is not yes. It is a quiet, considered, unshakable no. A no that isn't born of anger, but of love. Love for something you cannot bear to see erased. What is your 92 acres? What is the piece of you that is not for sale? The world will tell you it has a price, that everything has a price. Elspeth's story is the proof that it doesn't. Some things are not for sale. They are for tending, for protecting, for passing on. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is facing their own railroad, their own kind, certain man with a briefcase. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, and they need to be told, now more than ever.